Hello everyone and welcome to another special video this week. We had one on Monday discussing Utah Regionals results, but today is Wednesday. Tomorrow we have to check into the international tournament in Brazil, and on Friday we start competing. So yeah, I'm very looking forward to the tournament. I am quite nervous, I'm not gonna lie. I know I have it in me to repeat what was achieved in Australia, or even get a better result, which better than second. I only have first place left, but it's not easy. It's not easy. It's definitely possible, but it's not that easy because of all the luck involved in Pokemon. But we are here to discuss Brazil. As my friend Russell Apar kindly asked me to do more discussions and less deck briefing. So here we are to discuss Brazil. Now I had a difficult time deciding what to talk about today. I have some Brazilian friends. I did live in Brazil. I met quite a few people there at the internationals and regionals. I talked to Brazilian players. I'm pretty sure I can call a few of them good friends, and I also know the language, which it's not an advantage when you're playing Pokemon, but it is easier to communicate with other people, make friends, get information, and here we are. Now I don't know if people know about the site. It's called Pokemon TCGMG.com.br, and I'll try to remember because I always say so and I think I always forget, but I'll try to leave the link in the description down below. You guys should definitely give them a like on Facebook as well. You can see right down under there, there's the link to their Facebook page. They do record all the League Cup results from all over Brazil, which is a pretty big country. I didn't realize how big Brazil was until I got there, and I tried to travel through Brazil, and I realized it was way bigger than I thought. But they are compiling the League Cup results. We do have the Spring Series results right here, which coincidentally is going on right now and will finish right after Brazil. So these results are very relevant, and I find them very interesting because they follow a lot of the trends, but there's also things of interest to talk about, things of interest to mention. And so, first off, we see the CP per deck distribution. So Volcanion is clearly a dominant force down there. We don't know exact numbers of neither attendance, I don't believe. Let me check. No, we don't know attendance at each League Cup. I would assume the ones that have only top 4 listed were smaller League Cups, and we only have 2 weeks worth of results, which is understandable. But it is a very interesting information to review, and there are things that stand out. Volcanion is dominating. It did win Australia. Sorry, it did win. It did win Utah not this past weekend, but the one before, as we discussed on Monday. And apparently, Brazilians love their Volcanion. So that's the one deck that you should expect in numbers. Clearly, the players who are doing well, who are racking in the championship points, are playing Volcanion and are winning the tournaments or placing well enough. There's 12 Volcanions in the top cut out of all the combined League Cups, and the CP total they have is 410 CPs, which out of the whole thing, that's 1/4 of all the CPs out of 9 tournaments, I believe, have gone to Volcanion. So that's a pretty big amount, and even if there's just been one Volcanion player at each tournament and they've all won or done well or whatever, I think it's still valuable information despite not knowing the metagame distribution, simply because the better players in Brazil are doing well with Volcanion and are favoring Volcanion. So like past the first 1, 2, or 3 rounds in Australia, I mean in Brazil, you definitely should expect to be playing against the top players, either from Brazil, because they will be the majority, but other players as well. But if you're up against a Brazilian, well, do not be surprised if you're up against Volcanion or even Mega Ray. Now, Mega Ray is very interesting because in the Utah video I discussed, in my opinion, tier 1 decks are Volcanion, Turbo Dark, like the pure version, and the CDI Valplum. Tier 1.5, I mentioned Darkrai Dragons and Mega Mewtwo. And I personally am not a fan of Mega Ray. I feel like it's too weak to Parallel CD, and Parallel CD seems to be everywhere, even in Volcania now. But Brazilians like their Mega Ray as well, and I think that's like a big difference from the metagame we're used to seeing, at least in North America and the United States, where the biggest concentration of players and tournaments is, and the rest of the world. Mega Ray was a surprise to me when I saw it. It has almost as many CP as Volcanion. Those two are the two most favorite decks in Brazil, clearly. So it's something to keep in mind as well. This doesn't mean Volcanion will be the most played deck. This doesn't mean Mega Ray will be the second most played deck. But it wouldn't be a bad assumption to make that Volcanion and Mega Ray are two big targets down there. Like, if you don't want to play mirror matches, you want to have, whatever deck you do decide to play, you want to have a good Volcanion matchup, and you want to have a good Mega Ray matchup. Coming in third place with half as many CP as Volcanion is the CDI. Now let's check really quickly. I'm gonna assume the CDI means, yeah, we see Otavio right there in sixth place in the Ponto Geek League Cup with the CDI Valplum. We see Pedro Enrique in first place with the CDI Valplum. We see Paulo Anderson in the Livraria Leitura with the CDI Valplum. So they only mentioned the CDI up there, but it is the CDI Valplum, so that's good to know. There's no Takuya Yoneda versions of the deck going around. It's all Valplum. So pretty decent showing for the CDI Valplum. It is one of the most played decks internationally. The Utah distribution for day 2 did show, I believe, that the CDI was the most played deck, or was the deck that got the most players into day 2. So that's pretty interesting to see. And it does have a presence in Brazil, so it makes sense. It was regarded, or it still is regarded, as one of the best decks. To me, it is one of the best decks, simply because the turn 1 Valplum is incredibly powerful. Like, it might be too powerful, and people have been calling for a ban to Forest of Giant Plants. I don't think we're gonna see one at this point. We might see one maybe for the international, but I generally doubt it, because it's not as bad as Shiftry, where you would end games in turn 1. You get the Valplum turn 1, and there's still room for you to misplay. There's still room for your opponent to come back. There are cards that counter directly the Valplum, but there are many games which, even though they drag on longer, as long as you don't make any mistakes, the turn 1 Valplum simply means your opponent has no chance. So, the CDI, the number 3 deck. Then we have Yveltal, Mega Gardevoir, which I will assume is the STS version, and Mega Mewtwo. And Waterbugs, I guess. Those 4 decks, I do agree they're a solid tier 2. They definitely have a chance of beating the tier 1 decks, depending on how they're built, depending on how you run. But they do seem to be a little less powerful than the other cards. I mean, Yveltal with Garbodor and Parallel CD can deal very nicely with Mega Ray and Volcanion. The CDI causes its trouble because it has such a huge amount of HP. Then you have Mega Gardevoir, which completely gets wrecked by item lock, but can have a good Volcanion matchup. Resists Yveltal, will always succumb to Mega Ray, so there's a lot of different interactions right there. I classify the top decks as decks that can handle, or that can put up a fight against everything. Whereas if you're playing Mega Gardevoir EX from Steam Siege and you're up against Mega Ray, if that's not a 90-10 matchup, like if Mega Ray just gets anything going, they're going to win. Because you share the stadium, you deal less damage, they get easy one-hit knockouts, like, yeah. So a lot more polarizing matchups. Mega Mewtwo has some really good matchups. It can be clunky at times due to the Mega Rule, and it completely loses to Mega Gardevoir. Any version, either the pure Mega Gardevoir for Shaman to Hoopa or 3 Hoopa, Dragonites, etc., or even the other version, which is getting a bit more popular, the Cernias Geomancy Mega Gardevoir Brilliant Arrow version, because it will always run one Mega Gardevoir from Steam Siege, and that will just completely wreck you. Water Bugs is interesting. It's not listed as Quad Lapras. We see Quad Lapras down below, so you have to assume Water Bugs means Lapras and Glacian and Regice. Maybe even an Aurora CX thrown in there. I do know Gabriel Pino Semero was one of the the main creators, I would assume the main innovators of the old Water Bugs deck with Seismitoad EX and everything. So it makes sense that it still has ripples down there. I know a lot of people like it. It's a very versatile deck. You can even, like, there's Ninja Boy, there's Taurus. You can switch around with Manaphy, you have Energy Switch, you have Max Elixir, so it's a very versatile deck. Glacian and Regice can put a halt on a lot of Pokemon in the metagame, but because there's just no Pokemon that limits GX Pokemon just yet, I feel like that really weakens their capabilities. The very surprising thing here to me, or the most surprising thing here to me, I mean, you expect to see Gyarados, you expect to see Darkrai Dragons, or rather not Darkrai Dragons, you expect to see Houndoomel, Vespiquen, like different, like a smaller, wider array of decks in the bottom distribution of CP. But what I'm very shocked to see is the low amount of Darkrai EX and Darkrai Dragons. Darkrai EX to me is one of the best decks in the format. It's definitely tier 1 in my opinion, and it doesn't seem to be favored down in Brazil, or at least it's not putting up the results, which player skill definitely matters when analyzing results and when being objective. We did see that at Utah. Mega Mewtwo was the most played deck in Utah, but it was the deck that got the least amount of, like, proportionately, the least amount of players all the way into day 2. So that's something very important to consider. Yeah, like, a lot of things can go wrong on a single day. So maybe the Volcanion players got more lucky than the Darkrai players. Maybe you hit the right matchups. There's a lot of variables, but the chart off of 9 tournaments, that starts to give you a more objective result in terms of overall what is going on down in Brazil, because I know it's a very big question mark for a lot of people, like what to expect from the Brazilian local metagame. Just the same as in Australia, I did not know what to expect in the Australian metagame, so I went to 2 comic book stores down there, which I was told had leads. I talked to a few people, and I concluded it had a little bit of everything, which was pretty, like, as expected. I was worrying too much, but I didn't have a resource such as this one to analyze. Maybe there was, but I wasn't aware of it. So let's look at the chart, at the distribution chart. That exemplifies the decks in a more visual manner, the deck spread, more so than the CP spread. We do see Volcanion is the most played deck, followed by Mega Ray, then the CDI. So it follows the pattern that not only are they showing up the most, but they're also taking the most CP, which makes sense, just based on the fact that they're getting played more. But yeah, just take a look at Darkrai Dragons and Darkrai Turbo. Like, even if you combine those decks, it's only 7%, which is very, very different from what you would expect based off of the Utah regionals, based off of the international results in Australia and like Europe regionals. A lot of people from Europe really favor Darkrai, so it turns out in Brazil, in the southern hemisphere, they don't really like their Darkrai. And yeah, individual results we see here, names that are currently ranked at the top of the table. Otavio Gouveia, he's a first-year master player, I believe. He's only 15 years old, and he did go to London. He won the first regional in Brazil, the first out of 3 they're having, and he got top 8 there with the Decidueye Vileplume. We see my phone thinks I'm talking to it, but I'm really not. I don't recognize more names. Oh, there we see Gabriel Semedo with Water Bugs. Like I said, he was one of the main innovators of Water Bugs back for last season, so he still likes that deck. I would put money on him playing Water Bugs once again. He's one of the players you really want to watch out for down in Brazil. You have Andre Bortoni, who was top 16 in Australia. He's currently ranked, I believe, 8th in the Latin America rankings. And he's a good friend. He's running Mega Ray. So he used to play Jolteon, Regice, Glaceon, Carpador. Now he seems to have switched to Mega Ray. And I'm very surprised I don't see Gustavo Wada here, who is the 2nd place in Latin America. I'm 1st place. He's 2nd right now in the rankings going into Brazil. He got top 8 at the regional in Argentina, that I do know. But he's either not playing League Cups or he's just I seem to recall he got 9th place in one. But yeah, this is what is going on down in Brazil. It's just a little insight into what is going on, and there's nothing that stands out as completely out of the norm. You don't see something like a Fairy Dragons deck putting in the results. You don't see something like a Mega Alakazam Espion GX, which, by the way, if you missed the video yesterday, I really recommend it. It was really cool. But yeah, you're not seeing anything out of the ordinary. So we kind of make assumptions on percentages, but what I conclude off of this is that the metagame is going to be very similar to what we've seen at the International in Australia, to what we've seen in Utah, to what we saw in Argentina, and therefore consistency is king. You want your list consistent. You can face practically anything, so you don't want to have like a clear auto loss, I would say. Taking an auto loss to something like Darkrai would actually be okay apparently in Brazil, because you wouldn't expect to play one or more than one just based on these results. But this tournament will be bigger than Europe. Latin American players are going to show up in numbers. I believe the last number I saw on total participants was 600 or close to that. So I mean, I don't think there's going to be 100 no-shows. So we're definitely going to be having a bigger tournament than London. That means it's going to be as big as a US regional, as hard as a US regional, but with better prizes. So yeah, not much I can say here, guys. I did talk with my friends about what's going on in Brazil, how the metagame is developing over there, but I mean, other than Mega Ray and Turbo Dark like switching spots, the rest seems to be pretty standard. So yeah, gonna conclude the video right here, guys. I hope you enjoyed this different kind of result analysis preview to the tournament, and wish me luck, because I will definitely need it. Thank you guys so much, and I will see you guys tomorrow for some expanded action, whilst I check in for the Brazilian Latin American tournament. Bye bye.